Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and Here We Are is a show where we bring local folks on for conversation to talk about what they're doing, what they're up to. Today, on Here We Are with Bob Lyons. Bob Lyons has been around town since the late 80s. He owns and operates Southern Vermont Property Management. He is, as well as that, he's been on many different boards over the years. The school board, Leland and Gray, the Brattleboro Co-op, and currently he's working at Home at Last, which is an organization for homeless veterans, which he will talk to us about today. So welcome, Bob. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're very glad to have you here. And so I always kind of start with a little background just to sort of, see where you came from, like if you came from New Jersey or someplace like that.
I don't tell many people, but yes.
Northern New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suburb of the city.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And when you were getting to be college age, this was like late 60s, early 70s, right? You were going to school and what were you studying at that time?
I entered studying business, but soon realized that wasn't my focus. I changed majors quite a few times, but ended up majoring in sociology and minoring in psychology.
Mm-hmm. And I think that as we talk, we will see how those things have helped you through the years. And so when you were in college, it was, all of us who are our age sort of talk about those being such heady times, which they were. You've talked about the summer of 72. When you went off to Europe, I believe, is that right?
That's right. A friend and I flew over to Europe and we hitched all around for 3 months.
You weren't alone in that.
No.
Where'd you go?
All over Western Europe. We started in Luxembourg, made our way up to England, Copenhagen, to Amsterdam, spent some time in Switzerland.
Wow.
It was an amazing time.
Yeah. Hard to come back?
It was. It was a tough decision to come back, actually, but my college deferment was the deciding factor. That we were, Vietnam War was going strong, and my draft number was low, and it seemed wise to continue my college deferment and go back.
Yeah, I bet that was a hard choice if you were having a good time.
It was.
Yeah, but probably smart. And that was the time, wasn't that during the Olympics that year?
Yeah, actually, I was looking into getting a job at the Olympics in Germany at the time, and I'm very glad I didn't stay. That's when the Israelis got murdered. Would have been a bad thing to be at.
That was a big year. Yeah, that was very intense. And you avoided that by just a few months, though, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. And you came back. Was it hard to reacclimate, or did you come back changed in any way?
Well, that trip really did change me in a number of ways. It was, I went there, I was pretty radicalized in college. The anti-war movement was very strong, and we were all trying to achieve peace. But during my travels in Europe, realized that as much as I wanted peace, I was filled with anger. Anger over the war. And had a number of experiences in Europe that exposed me to that idea that if you want peace, it really comes from within. And so I started focusing a lot more on trying to get myself at peace.
And when you were in Europe, did you come across any other groups that you got involved with? When you say, a search for peace or looking for that kind of inner calm, were there things going on over there?
Yeah, through our travels, we would meet a lot of people, and we got to stay in a number of ashrams throughout Europe.
Oh.
And this group was having a festival in Switzerland. And just so happens, we were able to get a ride, and we got taken to this festival, and there I was surrounded by all these people filled with love and peace, and I just didn't get it.
Oh, wow.
Until I came in front of the guru, who, without a lot of thought, you couldn't help but feel the power of that force of love and peace. So it really had a strong effect on me.
Who was it? Do you remember?
Guru Maharaji.
Oh, it's Maharaji. And which country?
It was in Switzerland.
This was Switzerland.
In the Alps.
Ah.
Beautiful setting.
Oh, yeah. And did he have an enclave there, or was he traveling?
No, the group of followers that were there, but they were throughout Europe. There were ashrams throughout Europe. When I came back here, there were not so many.
Mm-hmm. But he was sort of just getting started over here, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came back. Yeah, that's a lot of changes when you're in your early 20s. A lot of influences.
Yeah, profound.
Yeah, yeah. And so you come back to the States. Did you find yourself looking for the same kind of thing here, or was that a discrete experience?
No, I actually, when I came back, the first thing I wanted to tell all my friends was all about this. And they didn't quite understand where I was coming from. But I was able to connect with an ashram out of Providence, Rhode Island, near where I was going to school. And so there was a community there that I stayed with.
And you were connected with them through the rest of college?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you went west after that? I don't want to miss anything here, though. Was there something in between, finding some inner peace and then going to San Francisco?
After school, a friend and I loaded up a van and headed out west, and the idea was to become ski bums, but as things happen, a lot of other opportunities came our way.
Yeah. And let me guess, was it a Volkswagen bus?
No, actually, it's a Dodge van.
It was a Dodge. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Not nearly as romantic or in keeping with the times.
The VW van came later.
Yeah. Well, at least it came. I mean, that's important. So
tie-dye curtains and all.
Oh God, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you could take a photograph of almost any group of people during that time, and traveling west, and wearing the same clothes. But it was beautiful too.
We ended up in Northwest Washington, Forks, Washington, and it's just a longer tale, but I ended up learning about the logging industry up there.
Wow, there are a lot of big trees out there.
They're huge.
And at that time, so we're talking the 70s, I would imagine that the climate, so to speak, of forestry was really different than it was then. And what kind of forestry were you doing?
We were doing cedar work. We would go in and salvage cedar in some clear cuts, and then split them up by hand and fly them out with helicopters.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
pretty exciting.
And where would they be going, do you know?
They would go to local mills where they'd be cut up into shakes for roofing.
Yeah, yeah. But this was selective cutting,
Yes.
right, at the time?
Yes.
Yeah. And there was, so there was a whole forestry management piece to what you were doing?
No.
No? Okay, let's be clear.
Northwest Washington was a little, there were clear cuts that we would go in and we would salvage cedar out of these clear cuts.
I see what you're saying.
The forest
yeah.
management piece came later on when I joined the Forest Service in Colorado. There was a Youth Conservation Corps, a great concept that the government started, and it was a works project. So we were hiring kids between the ages of 18 and 24 and taking them out in the woods and teaching them how to cut down trees and not hurt themselves and deal with a mountain pine beetle problem that was happening in the Front Range there.
And then you went to San Francisco after
Yep.
that? We got you to San Francisco. Okay. You're in the city now.
Yeah, my friend and I, we decided that, okay, we need to apply our college education. So instead of doing all this heavy labor, we were going to get real legitimate jobs, or try to, somewhat successfully. I ended up working at a warehouse, running a warehouse out there. And that was an interesting experience. Being in San Francisco, late 70s, was a fun time.
Yeah, what was it like?
It was, I think our first experience was Thanksgiving at Haight and Ashbury.
On the corner of.
Right. So it was a great experience. Met a lot of really interesting people.
And so how was the search for peace in San Francisco? When you talk about Maharaji, San Francisco is certainly a hotbed of all kinds of different organizations, spiritual organizations popping up.
At the time, there would be a periodical that would come out weekly, monthly, and in it would be a list of all the different practices that were out there. Everything from Hare Krishna to the Moonies.
Yeah.
And my friend and I were very open. Scientology also, shouldn't leave that out.
Yeah.
We were very open to experiencing other things, just learning about these different walks of life. And we would sample one a week.
Really?
Hare Krishnas on Sunday because they fed you.
Yep. Yep.
And we actually got enrolled by Scientology for a short time. Some of my friends are going to cringe at that, but it was interesting. We would be out in the streets of San Francisco and get people to come up and get interviewed and introduce them to the Scientology
that's
and L. Ron
interesting.
Hubbard.
Yeah, and that was the beginning days of Scientology also, and it was very different, certainly culturally, than it is now. Yeah, there were so many things going on.
Yeah, there were some good things to take out of it.
I'll bet.
I still use today. But
So after the Wild West, after you got back from the Wild West, you came to Brattleboro. How'd you get to Brattleboro?
There were a few stops before there. I went to Boston, stayed in Boston for a while. I actually got a job running a business with some friends, and learned all about business there.
Oh, that's good. Yep.
But in the meantime, my brother was living in Williamsville, and I wasn't a city guy, so every weekend I'd come out to Southern Vermont and hang out and hike in the woods and do the stuff I like to do.
Yeah.
So it took a while to figure out how to get up here. Had to stop in New Haven running a stitching plant, for example, for a few years.
That's okay. Stop there for a sec. That's really interesting. A stitching plant. That could mean so many different things. Can you just give a brief description of what that was?
Yeah, we were a shop that would do mostly. Our biggest client was road gear. We would make backpacks for bikes, but we would do all kinds of things. People would come in with ideas, and we would create these things, and then hopefully, get a job mass producing them for these people. So it was always interesting, but it was obvious that everything was going offshore, and the future was not as bright. So I was always looking for the next thing, and it seemed to make sense to move up to Vermont. My ex-wife at the time, my ex-wife was pregnant with our son, about 7 months pregnant when we made the move up here, and my daughter Lily was a year and a half old at the time, 2 years old. Yeah.
So getting out in the country was certainly more appealing than a stitching factory in New Haven.
Yeah, I mean, the idea coming here was we wanted to have more control over our kids' education. In Boston, that definitely was not going to happen. So that was a big impetus to get us up here.
It's also a big jump, actually, living urbanly like that when you have so much available and, at the ready.
Yeah, the fit was here, though.
Yeah, your heart was here.
Absolutely.
Even though you hadn't really laid claim.
Yeah.
So did you live outside of town for a while?
We bought a house in Newfane, and I still live there.
Oh, wow. That's roots.
Yeah.
So we're talking late 80s now, right?
Correct. That
you're here. And what were you doing? What did you get involved in?
Well, I came up here, and the idea was to try and do something that was not motivated by money, that was motivated with some ideals, and that was hard to come by. In the meantime, like I say, we had a child on the way, one child in the house, and I needed to make a living. So I ended up applying for and getting a job managing, being the regional manager for Grampy's at the time. And I was explaining this to friends of mine at the time, and they reminded me that I was coming up here for other reasons. And that got me to apply to Northeast Cooperatives, which is just moving from Somerville up to here. And
Right.
I was hired by them and started the first day they started here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that was when it was only ever up on Putney Road, right?
Correct. Northeast Cooperatives was an organization that was owned by its members and its workers. It was a hybrid co-op.
Oh,
and so we distributed throughout New England, and we worked mainly with cooperatives and buying clubs.
Oh, buying clubs, right.
Just kind of a thing of the past.
Yes,
but yeah.
I haven't even heard that in a really long time.
Yeah, that was our main group. People would order from us, and we'd meet them at churches or schools with a semi-truck and unload, and everyone would grab things and split them all up. And
that's so interesting to see how that has sort of morphed over the years when you think about CSAs today, and
well, a lot of co-ops today started as buying clubs and developed into retail stores.
And when you say that Northeast Cooperatives was a hybrid, was that a different kind of model for that time?
Yeah. Co-ops come in different forms. You could have producer co-ops, like the Cranberry Association. Then you have worker co-ops that's owned and run by the workers. And then you have member co-ops where the members own it. And in this case, it was owned by both the members and the workers. Made it unusual. So we both had a say and we both had a stake.
And how did you, just in terms of organization, how did that work?
We had a board of directors, and so we had a number of people from retail stores and some people representing buying clubs, and then a couple of people that were workers on the board.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of things to juggle in an organization.
Well, it was a lot, and in the end wasn't sustainable, as it happens.
But it did sustain itself for a period of time.
I worked there, I think, about 13 years. So yeah, it did. And in the end, it's economy of scale in the warehouse business, and it was tough to compete with the Stone Mills and United Natural.
Which were much bigger companies.
It was Cornucopia at the time, but yeah.
Yeah, right, Cornucopia.
Yeah. So what Corny did is they bought Stowe, and then they started buying warehouses throughout the country, and it was hard to deal with, to compete with them price-wise.
Right. So we're sort of segueing into another facet of your career here, which is working on the board of the co-op. And so how does our co-op fit into the whole picture there of how things have sort of changed over the years?
Our co-op is just the most wonderful thing. Run by great people, great staff. Sabine Ryan, the general manager, is just doing a wonderful job following in Alex Giori's footsteps, who was there for over 30 years.
Yes, I know, that's amazing.
The transformation of the co-op from one place to the next, from Flat Street to the old
PNC.
The old PNC, and then finally building our own building in probably the worst economy we've had in a long, long time. Was quite an achievement.
Yeah, yeah. And that's owner and, well, it's not owner, it's member run.
It's member
run.
Yep.
And how many members does it have now, do you know?
I think there's over 7,000 right now. We just had an annual meeting last Friday that was just such an uplifting thing.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, I was on the board for a while, and while we were building the building, we were running in the red. We had huge loans, and finally we are now in the black this year.
Oh, wow.
And it was very nice to hear those things.
Oh, I'll bet it was. So this is the first year since the new building. And when you were when you first started, I guess maybe Northeast, there was a real co-op movement going in the United States, and you were working there. Did you have any major influences or mentors working there?
I did. Actually, Frank Adams was a person in ICA, International Cooperative Association, out of Boston. And I was running a committee for the workers, trying to figure out the best way to make it equitable, that the owners, both member owners and worker owners, got a fair share. In the beginning, we got a fair share because of our sweat equity. We weren't getting paid much, and our sweat equity kind of balanced it out. So if there were any dividends, we would get an equal proportion. Well, that changed. We started to get regular wages. Our wages started to increase slowly. And so we started a committee to look at that and try and figure out if we should have more of an equity stake. In the beginning it was $25, and I think we changed it to $2,000.
That's a big shift.
It was, and yeah. In the end, it wasn't enough. You need a lot of capital to run a warehouse.
Yeah. And so at some point along there, you got into property management.
Yeah, again, a few stops along the way, but there was a job opening at the Hooker Dunham. And I was fortunate enough to get trained by Gail Nunziato, who was running the show at the time, and she was leaving. And so it was an opening, part-time job, and I applied, and she taught me a lot about the rental business and running a building and managing it.
So you're not selling, you're renting.
Yeah,
right?
that's
For
an
the most
important
part?
distinction.
Yeah.
When we meet people, so we get hired by clients, people who have houses or multifamily buildings, and we go out and try and find appropriate tenants. And one thing I learned early on is we're not selling this to people. We're trying to match people. We're like matchmakers almost. Trying to
Yentas,
fit
right?
Sure, that works. Trying to fit people to places. And when we do our job right, it's wonderful. Everyone wins.
Yeah.
The owners win,
Yeah.
the tenants win, and we, get some money.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, and you get to meet so many different kinds of people too.
That's the most fun.
Yeah.
There's so many interesting people come into town
Yeah.
through SIT or New Chapter or the co-op or the hospital.
Right.
So we get to meet a lot of new people coming to town, and that's always fun to introduce them to Brattleboro because we really love being here.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great community.
I know. Well, for those of us, who have been here 30, 40 years now, there's a reason why we're still here. And I can see that. Have you noticed in showing people around and showing properties, has it changed?
There are people trying to get away from the rat race and trying to come
Yeah.
up here and simplify their lives and slow things down. And for some people, that's a tough change, but you watch it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
You could take part in what's going on. You could get involved,
Right.
as involved as you want to. That's one of the reasons I joined the school board. I didn't really feel connected, and by joining the school board, I really jumped in, both
yeah,
feet.
with both feet, yeah. The school board, I bet, yes.
That was a great experience. Met some great people, worked with some great teachers. It's a wonderful school system, great communities.
That's great. You've had really good experiences all the way around.
It's been a ball.
That's saying something. And so, let's talk about Home at Last, because this was an organization that I had not heard of in town. And you're on the board, and you work with homeless veterans in Vermont.
Yeah, this is a great organization. We started by Bob Miller, a World War II veteran. That was run kind of almost like a club. They buy a trailer here or there, get enough money, and then put someone in. And as it started to grow, there was a need to kind of organize it a little bit more and make it a little more official. So we got some people on with some board experience and developed a good system of managing properties. Of course, that's what I help out with.
Right.
But right now we have 6 trailers. And we do a fun drive every Veterans Day, and we get about 25 grand or so a year, which is growing each year, and we take that money and try and buy a trailer a year when they're available. They're hard to find.
And so this is not rental situation. How does it work?
It's a shared situation. So we find veterans. We work with the Veterans Administration. Sometimes locally, and when we find candidates, they sometimes come with a voucher. So some of the rent is paid through that voucher, and then the tenant pays the balance. And then we help out where we can. We get them furniture and things like that.
You do? Wow. And it's all ages, I would imagine.
Yeah.
You're seeing a pretty good cross-section of people?
Yeah, mostly older vets at the current time, but we're open to anyone that needs a home.
And how do they find out about it?
Through the Veterans Administration mainly, through the local.
We should actually probably let's show your leaflet here. If we can get a close-up on this, Home at Last, and you have a website that's almost ready to launch. Even if you just Google Home at Last, you can get some information. You've been doing that for how long? The Home at Last?
10 years.
10
maybe.
years, really. It's been here that long. But it's been successful. People have been happy.
It's been very successful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough group to deal with. Some veterans come with some issues, and sometimes it doesn't work. But when it does work, it's such a wonderful thing. It gives these guys and women an opportunity to get a home over their head and then focus on trying to get work. And it just changes their lives for the better.
Home at Last here in Brattleboro, has it been mostly local people?
No.
It hasn't.
No, it's people in Vermont that we find out about one way or the other.
And are there other Home at Last?
Yeah, we're a local organization, but there are organizations similar to ours throughout the country. And then a little plug for the Warrior Connection that Ann Black has put together here in town.
Yeah.
That's an amazing group. I mean, we really need to help our veterans. We send them out to war, and then they come back, and we give them no support. So this is a really important thing, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. It feels good all the way around. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you really like Brattleboro, and you're really happy being here in Brattleboro. Is there a favorite place that you have in Brattleboro? I think we all, have our own little places that we go to, whether it's with a cup of coffee or to meet a friend or to just hang out.
Well, since I'm downtown every day,
Yes.
I try and share my time.
With those around you.
with different restaurants for sure, lunch.
Uh-huh.
So Amy's is one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah.
I love Peter Haven's and Hazel's, and the Echo is great. Tulip Cafe has a sandwich named after me. I'm very proud of.
That kind of brings me also to, to this sort of something that nobody quite talks about, but it's kind of a silent contest, I think, that goes on in Brattleboro about who indeed is the mayor of Main Street. And I'm not going to mention any names at all.
Your husband, I'm going to give him credit.
I'm not going to mention any names at all, but I am going to say that it changes over time, and it feels like there's a little jockeying for position at different times. It's not just guys, it's women as well. So mayors and mayoresses of Brattleboro, I think it's an interesting little volley that's going on that most people are not aware of, but the ones who are involved in it are very aware of it.
Well, it's amazing, this community in Brattleboro. When I worked at Northeast, I never really came into town, didn't really feel a part of it, kind of was very private with my life. And now my life's a lot more public because of what I do. And I'm on Main Street every day, I deal with all the banks. So it's just a wonderful community to be a part of, and getting to know all the store owners. It's a great place.
That's great. I think it's a great place to stop right here. It's beautiful. Thank you, Bob. It's so good to hear all good news about our town and that you've had such great experiences.
Well, it's fun to share it with you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being on the show.
You bet. Thank you.
We will see you on Main Street.
You will. Honk.
Or wave.
Or wave, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thank all of you for coming in to join us today. Another great conversation with another local person who knows the town and who loves it. So tune in again next week. We will have another interesting person to talk to, and we're so glad you came today to join us. Thank you.